labor codes, India has completely structured or transformed its labor market. Why these four labor codes and their consolidation was necessary. Hello and welcome to PrepAlpine, the next generation UPSC institution. We are continuing with our High Yield UPSC series where we discuss some of the highly probable topics for your upcoming UPSC prelims, mains and interviews examination. The topic for today is the four labor codes. So as you all know that recently India has completely structured or transformed its labor market. The 29 central laws that dealt with several aspects of labor governance in India have been replaced by four different codes. That means that these 29 laws have now become more sorted, more structured, and signal towards labor governance, uniform labor governance in India. So now let us understand why these four labor codes and their consolidation was necessary. So as we all know that there were some structural gaps in the previous system as there were multiple definition of wages. For example, when you are dealing with an industry, you have a different wage. When you are dealing with agriculture, you have a different wage. When you are dealing with some private sector, you have a different wage, which created ambiguity, litigation, and inconsistent benefit calculation. Apart from this, there were scattered welfare laws, no complete definition of wages, abrupt unorganized sector, no rules for gig workers, and this also led to high compliance burden for the companies as well as for the workers. And lastly, there was a fragmented dispute resolution mechanism. So the new codes aim to simplify the procedures, to expand the social protection, and lastly, to balance the industrial relations with workers' welfare. So, what are these codes? The first code is the Code on Wages, which deals with uniform wage system, a national floor wage, and a single definition of wages across multiple industries. The second one is the Industrial Relations Code, and as the name suggests, it deals with industries. It deals with employment contracts, retrenchment, strikes, and unions. The third one is the Code on Social Security. It deals with your PF, your EPFO contributions, your ESIC contributions, gratuity, inclusion of gig and platform workers, which has been one of the most important changes in the recent times, as you have seen that gig workers have risen in India in the last 10 years. And last is the Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code, which, as the name suggests, deal with safety of the workers, licensing, working hours, and contract labor norms. So now let us understand each of these codes in a bit detail. So the Code on Wages, it was created in 2019 and it gives a uniform wage architecture, like a single definition for wages. It creates a national floor wage below which the states cannot go. It guarantees a universal minimum wage coverage, and lastly, it introduces formalization measures like mandatory employment letters, digital or physical wage slips, etc. And this is a foundational shift in wage clarity, improved enforceability, and greater uniformity. The second one, that is the Industrial Relations Code, was drafted in 2020, and this deals with worker protection. So, to solve industrial disputes, matters related to trade unions, matters related to employment relationships, all have been covered under this code. So it talks about fixed term employment. That is, it offers flexibility to employers. Like there is contractual employment, then there is fixed term employment, and then there are permanent employees. So three different types of employees. Then there are stricter strike procedures that you have to give a mandatory 14-day notice if you have to go on a strike, and mass casual leave, like all the employees of the company decide to go on a casual leave, then that would be deemed as a strike. Then higher threshold for retrenchment and closure approval. And you have to remember this because this is one of the concerns that have been raised by different experts. Then it says that the sole negotiating power will be with the majority union. That is, the majority of the members are a part of one union. Then that is the union that has the right to negotiate with the employers. And last is the grievance redressal committee. So what is the significance? It aims to create industrial climate conducive to investment while safeguarding essential worker rights. The third one, and the very important one, is the Code on Social Security. And this is the one that includes the gig or the platform workers. So this unifies social security laws and moves towards universal social protection. No matter what kind of a worker you are, you will be given a definite social protection. So it gives recognition to gig and platform workers, that is the digital economy workers, or preferably what our Honorable PM prefers to call the orange economy workers. It gives wider EPFO and the ESIC, the employee state insurance coverage. It gives gratuity for the fixed term employees, that if you are a fixed term employee, that is eligibility after 1 year. This clause of 1 year has now been added, which was previously 5 years, creating a long standing disparity which was earlier present. Next, it creates a National Social Security Board that is responsible for implementation and designing of various schemes for the gig or the platform workers. And lastly, it enables digital registration and portability for workers. The fourth one is the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions, or the OSHWC Code 2020, which aims to establish uniform workplace standards. That is, it offers single registration and single return. You do not need to register at multiple licenses. You do not need multiple licenses. Then it mandates annual health checkups. Whether you are a bank employee, whether you are an industrial employee, annual health checkups have to be there, which is a very significant step given the health condition of India, especially of the women. Then the third one, which is the very important one, is the inclusion of women in all sectors, including night shifts, provided that the safety measures have been taken by the employer. That is, women cannot be denied a job on the ground just because that they are women. The fourth one is the protection of contract and migrant labor. And the last one is the digital inspection system. So this OSHWC code moves India towards globally aligned standards. That is, the emphasis is now on dignity, safety, and uniformity. So overall, we can say that these four labor codes focus on clear and enforceable wage rights, expanded safety nets, recognition and inclusion of gig workers, safer and more regulated workplaces, and lastly, the greater formalization of the workplace which was needed. Apart from this, it also helps the industry. It creates greater flexibility. It creates uniform definitions which were very confusing for the industries. It creates digital inspections, reducing arbitrary discretion. It reduces their paperwork. And most importantly, it benefits the economy because it has introduced formalization. It will ease the environment of doing business in India. And lastly, it aligns India with the global benchmarks. So these four codes are very important in reforming the labor governance of our country, but there are significant concerns or challenges that need to be removed. So first of all is the implementation delay. Since it has been implemented in 2019, 2020 and still the implementation has not yet started, So that is one concern. Then there are worker concerns since the retrenchment limit has been introduced or increased, since the strike clause has been introduced, or rising prevalence of fixed term contracts. So all these are concerns for the workers. Then there is gig worker protection challenge, that yes, you are recognizing the gig workers, but there has to be recognition among the employers also, which still does not exist. And then there are industry reservations. For example, uniform wage definition may increase contribution liabilities. Digital readiness is not present across industries, especially when we talk of the MSMEs, and state level variations also exist. So the way ahead lies in accelerated state level rulemaking to ensure that these laws are uniformly implemented across the nation. We must develop a robust digital infrastructure so that the registration requirements, compliance requirements are met uniformly. Then there has to be a tripartite dialogue mechanism between the worker, the employer, as well as the government, because these three are the major stakeholders in these labor laws. Then there has to be a clear funding architecture for the social security fund that is to be created for the gig workers welfare. There has to be capacity building of inspectors and labor officials. And lastly, there have to be awareness campaigns to educate the workers about their rights, especially those working in remote conditions, informal conditions, the migrant workers. They need to be made aware about their rights so that if denied, they can demand them. Lastly, there is no doubt that these four labor codes aim to transform India's labor landscape. They have shifted India from a fragmented, outdated system to a unified, technology enabled, and worker inclusive framework. But their implementation is the only thing that is required out today. So that's it for this video. If you want more such content, please subscribe to the channel and keep watching Prep Alpine. Thank you.